Dear colleagues, I would like to start our session. I hope you get the translation. Everybody is here. We have 90 minutes and our agenda is really strict. We have a really serious number of interesting presentations with a significant number of experts to speak, so we have to cope to be within this 90 minutes. So I'm expecting a very intellectual performance here, and I would like to ask the speaker to limit themselves within 10 minutes. Dear colleagues, I would like to ask you to be within 10 minutes when presenting your ideas. And then we have 3 to 5 minutes to discuss your issues. I would like to apologize for these strict rules, but we are really limited in time. Our session, Smart Megacities, Technology, Data and Social Communication. I'm moderating this session today, and I don't want to steal the time. I just would like to tell you that when I was asked to moderate this roundtable, I said I was interested in the following issues. We can also talk to these issues, but depending on what the speakers want. Taking in different smart cities projects, I saw a number of times I tried to answer the question how the new technologies of smart cities can change the life in the cities, and vice versa, how the traditional way of life, the cultural background may have an influence on the technology use in the city. In the end, both questions are well linked with the quality of life in a modern urban environment. And within this triangle, as I think, this is my personal opinion, the main expert discussions have been carried out within the last 10 years. It can also deal with some industrial interests with the safety, environmental protection, transport, education, healthcare, and so on. But in the end, as I think, the idea of a smart city was initiated by the trend to improve the quality of urban environment. How the technological innovations, which are really interesting and which are existing in different cities of the world, can be linked with the quality of life and urban environment, and how the connection of these cities to the governance technologies can also help to achieve this long-term goal. Probably this is the main topic the experts are discussing today. This is the only thing I wanted to tell you now, because I would like to express my own opinion to the topic we will discuss today. And now I would like to come back to the agenda of our roundtable. And the first speaker will be Roger Bayley, the principal of Roger Bayley in Vancouver. Roger had a flight over the whole world in order to speak for 10 minutes here, and he really needs our support.
And it's an absolute pleasure to be here and be able to speak to you. I'm going to try and focus on what Vancouver has been doing over the last 20 years to really bring itself and get recognition as one of the most livable cities in the world. I think last year we lost that to Melbourne, but we've always actually had an extraordinary level of lifestyle. And I'd like to set up essentially how we built that program for the whole municipal area. So we began with a vision for bringing together everyone. So essentially based on the highest possible quality of life that we could achieve, embracing cultural vitality, economic prosperity, social justice, and compassion, and nurturing that within essentially a healthy, natural environment. So that's where we began that, and within that concept to promote human settlement that is socially, economically, environmentally healthy, and make efficient use of the public facilities, services, and other resources we have available to us. So I'm going to try and focus on those issues today. That's a shot of Vancouver at the moment. You can kind of get a sense of the scale of it. We have about 2.5 million people, so about a tenth the size of Moscow. So it's not a big metropolitan area. It's divided up, as you can see in this shot here, a series of municipalities, each one of which has its own development center. So we have around about 8 development centers in Vancouver now, each one of which has participated in developing this overall program. And if you look at that, Vancouver itself proper, the downtown core, the Olympic Village in the foreground, that I was the design manager for, one of Vancouver and Canada's leading sustainable communities. It won the United Nations Prize for the Best Built Sustainable Community in North America last year, in 2010, being very successful. And if we look at essentially, there are 5 principles that have been embodied by the city of Vancouver and its surrounding precincts. The first is that we encourage impact urban planning. So we really try and focus on building communities that are compact, have density to them, and that we can bring people together around that basic thesis. The second one is sustainable economies, and that within each of those compact communities, we build sustainable economies that actually drive the opportunity for employment within that particular area. The third being that we protect the environment. Vancouver is extraordinarily conscious of not only its own environment, but in recognition of the global condition. So we are particularly interested in carbon emissions and preserving the environment for the future children beyond ourselves. A lot of time and effort spent on that issue. The fourth issue that we've been focused on is that when we build a community and we bring people together in those dense, compact communities where we have economies that will sustain them, that we build them as complete communities. And what we mean by that is that those communities have housing for a wide range of people. They have job opportunities for a wide range of people. They respect the notion that we've built another center. And a lot of the conversation that you've heard today is really focused on that question of building discrete communities that are not part of the central core. And then within that, connecting together those communities with sustainable development. 15 years, we've moved about 25,000 people into the business core of the city. So we've got 15 years, we've moved about 25,000 people into the business core of the city. So we've got actually a community of people who work, live, play, recreate, and actually their life. And then which is one of the communities, and now this is essentially a satellite community that's being developed in order to sustain itself as an independent area of development. This is Surrey, a major, probably one of the largest economic development zones around the British Columbia, but it's essentially a self-contained community with commercial, recreation, work, housing, transportation systems that make up that community. This is Metro Town, which is another major community. You can see in the very back of this slide where Vancouver actually is. So this is quite actually a long way out. Again, it's a complete community. It has all the components that are necessary in order to make an environment where people can actually live, grow, and shared time with their families. So from a sustainable economy point of view, my apologies, I'm jumping past some of these slides, but the time limit is pretty onerous. This is the agricultural areas that surround Vancouver. We have a real mandate to maintain agriculture within the precinct of the city in order that we have local food sources available to all parts of the development area. And that is a really critical program. If you look at this, we've got a large amount of now greenhouse food production, berries, and so we've tried to centralize food production around where the communities are so that each community is not bringing in a lot of transportation. And the same is applied for the industrial centers. Those are built into each community so that people can actually, again, participate in the commercial success of the country and the province, close to where they work and home. This is essentially almost in the heart of the city. There's aerospace industries that have been built into various precincts in order to support family opportunities for employment. And cultural issues are a very strong driver of employment opportunities throughout the whole of the Lower Mainland. And the issue around protecting the environment, as I said, we are very, very conscious of this question, and an awful lot of what we talk about has got to do with building a relationship between people and the environment that they're living in, because that we actually have concluded is really where the spirit of human sense comes from, that you have a relationship with the environment and the natural world that you grow up in. This is an interesting little shot here. I put it in because we built that island not for us, but for the animals and the fish and the insects and the bugs and the rats that live around in the center of the city. So we not only think about building homes for ourselves, but we actually ended up building homes for all the other species that occupy this planet with us. And sometimes we don't think about that, but we should. It's another part of the Olympic Village development, and I didn't airbrush that heron into there. That's where he lives. So those kinds of areas have been developed in order to create family environments where people can actually enjoy their recreation close to where they live, close to the opportunities for work. And so if we talk about complete communities, we're always focusing on different forms of housing. So a lot of high-rise development in the central core of the city now, lower development for seniors, housing that is for family-oriented, and the Olympic Village is a combination of social housing for people who are of low income and those who are buying more expensive homes. So recreation, of course, is always tied into that in making sure that there are recreational facilities. One of the things about increasing density in any part of a city is you must provide the amenities that support that density. Otherwise, you're going to have serious difficulties. So a lot of effort in Vancouver has gone into building the kinds of facilities that support family life, education, and children. It's the convention center in the downtown core. You notice that it has a green roof. So again, it's been built to provide habitat for insects and butterflies and birds, and so all kinds of people live up on that roof. And that notion of connectivity to the water is important to us, particularly because we're a city that's surrounded by water. As a recreational, he's smiling at me, I've got a few seconds left to go here. So just sustainable development around transportation, huge emphasis now on bike paths and walking and making the city actually accessible in terms of how you move around it. There's less traffic now in the center of Vancouver than there was 10 years ago, and yet there's 25,000 people more living there, right? So it's been very effective. C-bus connections across to the other outlying precincts. Transportation networks for goods and services, which are critical to the commerce of the area. So these are, again, the 5 key principles that have been set up that govern the development of the whole of the precinct. Compact urban planning, sustainable economies, protect the environment, build complete communities, and provide sustainable transportation. And each, within that framework that's been developed for the whole area, each city has now developed their own contribution and program to implement those policies. So essentially what we've ended up doing is using a community consultation in order to provide a collective way of approaching the redevelopment of our city. Thank you.
Спасибо, Роджер.
Thank you very much, Roger. Thank you very much for being within the time limit given. Dear colleagues, I would like to start a general discussion afterwards, but you may have 2 or 3 questions right now. You can also ask them, and Roger will keep them in mind. He will answer them afterwards during the general discussion. Does anyone want to ask a brief question? You're welcome. Please use a microphone. No question. Oh, there is a question one. Constantine, you're welcome. The speakers are also allowed to ask questions. Roger, thank you very much for your presentation. I will speak Russian. I will come back to the topic of our round table. You also described the concept of the city development and which role the citizens are playing in this city development and which role the technologies are playing in this connection. Thank you. Roger, I would like to keep this question in mind for the further discussion afterwards.
Dear colleagues, do you have any other questions? Thank you. Then I will just give the floor to our speakers who will, as I understand, we are now talking about double speech, coupled speakers. Alexei Novikov, Managing Director for Thomson Reuters for the CIS countries, and Roman Postnikov, who will talk about the experience of the Megafon company in Moscow. Thank you so much. Good morning. Good afternoon. Once the presentation is being prepared, I will talk about the Thomson Reuters company, which I represent. And this is one of the partners of our consortium. It has prepared this this presentation by the Space Group. And the part which we were responsible for is called data. The presentation is being prepared with some technical adjustments. Let me say a couple of words on why we are titled Data. This topic is quite a fashionable one, but for a city, this topic is a very crucial theme, especially for a major city. First of all, if you imagine three properties of a city. First of all, it's hardware, then certain institutions which are present in the city, municipalities, and so on and so forth. And then people. If the 2 first concepts are quite manageable, the third part, the people, is difficult to conceive, especially when we talk about everyday life. It is difficult to draw any statistics, to learn more facts about the people, and the contradiction between the dynamics of the modern city and the hardware of the city creates lots of problems, which we have been trying to find out. The second reason why it is interesting, if you look at modern research of how modern people behave, you see that many people get more leisure time and more funds to feel free in the urban atmosphere. In Europe, 1/3 of all people can afford lots of leisure. So one third of all the people are freelancers. They can move chaotically around the city, and a modern city like Moscow, which was built like a Fordist city, so it's a Detroit 10 times larger than Detroit. It has industrial zones, it has residential areas. There are not many cities with such clear distinction, and this hard, which was built according to the Soviet patterns, there's a contradiction which is quite a major one. Then there's a third reason why we decided to tackle this topic. More and increasingly, the urban environment takes on a fourth dimension. It's a part of the environment. It's the new city area. So as the Twitter did call it, it's a new square, new dimension. What types of data do we have to deal with? First of all, we're dealing with statistics, with the data which come in real time to us, and then the data which are generated by the people while they are exchanging information. Let's touch upon every type one by one. This is the classical statistical database, data stream, which is provided by Thomson Reuters, which makes it possible to compare the employment data in different cities of the world. It's very similar in different cities worldwide. You have opposite trends in São Paulo and Paris. In Paris, it's declining. In São Paulo, it's increasing the employment. So you can get an impression of what's going on. So the drawback is quite... the shortage of this data is quite obvious. It doesn't give the sense of dynamics in the city. If we look at the data in the real time, you see that the situation is quite a different one. We start to see how the city is changing, how the transportation flows are changing, how people behave in real time, and we can catch certain bottlenecks and get a sense of the reasons and create certain sociology of this. So I need to get out of this. Well, finally, if we get back to the data which we are using, it's an attempt to grasp what's going on in 4D dimension. So in the internet, in social networks, we have performed a certain monitoring in social networks related to Moscow, and thus we wanted to draw a semantic map of Moscow, how differentiated across the area of the city it is. Then the third type of the data, we didn't touch upon this, but this type of the data will have its future. We're talking about different types of information exchange. We're talking about shared consumption of the city. So different mobile application, different other systems. It gives a big, tremendous economic effect. It's of course the work of the future, but whatever happens in the traffic, which is facilitated by different web and mobile applications, it helps us reduce the costs for developing the transport infrastructures by many billions of dollars. So this self-adjustment of our citizens gives us a tremendous effect in terms of cost savings. If we get back 50 years ago, when the computer programming just was at its onset, the real boost of it was at the point where the Stuart computer was invented, when the data moved from just digits to real programs. And that's what's happening right here and right now, when information exchange is becoming a source of information aimed at analyzing things at a higher level. Let me share with you some results together with our partners from the Megafon company, Megafon cell phone provider. We have drawn maps of mobility in Moscow agglomeration, Greater Moscow in real time. We're studying the workload on the network, and it gives us a chance to grasp this mobility in real time without dealing with the personal data of the subscribers. We just measure it in joules or in some other units. So it's a good approximation, and it's completely anonymous. If I would like to talk about the structure of transport flows, so we shouldn't think of it as a threat to an anonymity. We just can generalize all the things and get the idea. One of the counterintuitive conclusions we've made is that the 2/3 of Greater Moscow remains on its place, so the people don't move during morning hours. 66% or 70%, they don't move anywhere in the morning. It says, so you think that Moscow is moving like a ant house in the morning, but in fact it doesn't. People remain on their places. Elderly people, we have lots of elderly people here, and lots of children. It's a interesting fact, but we see that there is a resource to increment the mobility. It makes us stunned, and it makes us a bit afraid of this, because the city has to develop in terms of transportation. Another interesting result, which has allowed us to get the cross-section of mobility, you can see in this map centripetal and centrifugal illusion. So the radial structure of Moscow, you see that in many cases you have to go to the center to get to adjacent district of the outskirts. So it's in 1/4 of all cases you have to hit the center. It's a counterintuitive result, but it's the case, and we have to draw a conclusion. We have to increase the density of our network of the Cordic highways and streets. We see the excessive travel by different levels. So hitting the center when moving from one peripheral district to an adjacent one. So the upper picture is split by different levels. You see how many. The next part is semantic analysis. It's a very important theme for us because it allows us to discover several very important opportunities of Moscow's social structure. This map, which you see, shows what the people online perceive as the center and the outskirts. It has been drawn up from social networks. That's the perception of social. So north and south Moscow are perceived as the outskirts, and the center is very narrow. This red spot is perceived as the center. The white space, the white area is just a gap, a total gap. It is seldom discussed by users, and it does not represent an environment. And this is quite interesting. There is a phenomenon outside the urban community when the space or the area is used by the city, but it doesn't make up a certain place. So the population is concentrated at the center, and the number of definitions from the outskirts is quite small. And the semantic analysis made it possible to draw a conclusion that the negative senses here, the microgeography of negative senses, has a very stable structure, and they have very various peculiarities. So if we evaluate the quality of environment, comfort versus discomfort, in the outskirts, you just perceive the physical safety, comfort versus discomfort. So these piles which you see are represented by circles of different color. So the factors are quite varying. In the center, it's quite monolithic. But the toughest part here is that the microgeography of negative senses is very well concentrated. So the processes of ghettoization are underway, and we have to monitor them. The last conclusion which I would like to share with you is that there is a quasi-urbanization at the outskirts of Moscow. We have to operate the concept of population density. You see that it's like a funnel. It's increasing towards the outskirts, towards the peripheral. Moscow is the density of population in Moscow is next to Decca, which is the most densely populated city in the world. And then there is a gap between social and commercial infrastructure and the population density in the outskirts, and this gives rise to many transportation problems which exist in Moscow. We're talking about a full-fledged picture of transportation in Moscow, and then you have the real estate price curve. It's the highest one in the center, and then there is no reaction of price signals towards any factors of environment. This is the poor adverse density of population, and we have enough subcenters, not enough subcenters around Moscow which would build their own environment. They are in the proto plan of Moscow, and Harold Hotelling has described this. The ice creamer's task. So where do the two ice cream vendors have to meet to get the best business? And the most appropriate place for them is to be together. Moscow environment, it does not provide this opportunity. I'm not talking about walking about the free space when you can enter several places at a time. People can't just do it any other way. People just prefer driving around in cars. So there's there's no such effect as agglomeration. If you look at the periphery of Moscow at the right picture, you can see in that picture that you have very few clusters at the sides, which could be perceived as local centers. There are sub-centers, and there are probably the hope for Greater Moscow, which can be actuated over the recent years, over the coming years. Of course, it's difficult to draw a concise picture. They could be pointless, But people in the authorities were quite enthusiastic about this, to track the electricity power consumption and waste removal, and this becomes an infrastructure not only for emergencies but to grasp the future development of the city. Then the representation of data. The Megafon, of course, covers 1/3 of the market, of the telecoms market in Russia, especially in Moscow. So the data are representative. It's just the reality we are facing. Then the semantic analysis comes from the environment, which is connected to the internet, so it's 100% representation. Then the last sources of data are quite numerous. There are certain assumptions which are related to certain classified information. You have lots of information in open access, and those precise mobility, accurate mobility maps can be drawn just from open data without any specific tools, specified tools. This topic here should not be considered. In conclusion, I would like to thank all the partners which have participated in this work. The Institute for Urban Economy, of course, this is the Megafon company, telecoms services provider, which has made it possible to draw the map of mobile flows. This is the Ex Libris company, which has drawn up the semantic analysis. The Matryoshka company, which has helped us with the visualizations. The Nokia company, which has provided its geospatial servers. And of course, my special acknowledgement goes to, appreciation goes to Thomson Reuters and the Katerina Serova, who has done a tremendous bulk of work. And now the floor gives to Roman Postnikov, who will represent our partner in this work. I have 2 minutes left. You should have stopped me.
But as you speak, you have been talking for more than 20 minutes. Dear colleagues, I would like to be brief. And I will also trying to tell you why am I here now, because I will take a microphone. I would like to show my presentation. There are 2 reasons. As Alexei said, absolutely right. The study data were based on the Megafon service, and a very good visualization made a very good map as a result. And the second reason is, what is our vision, what is the big data in terms of the city. This is the basics of our study. And the big data for us as a telecom company is a data flow from our equipment for our base stations, from the load of these base stations, because these stations serve a lot of different events, and you really understand there's around 2,000 SMS calls and internet access, what happens every single second in our city. And the data are really big. In order to understand what the big data about city are, I would like to ask you one question. We didn't try to measure them in bytes, we measure them in kilograms. This is a standard facility of the urban environment, because the equipment processing this data, enabling us to get these results. This is what we see every single day on the streets at a typical car, 700 kilograms. 1,700 kilograms. It's a kind of DNA for us, because we are opening dozens of shops, and we also install base stations, and we understand in order to make it comfortable for you, because you are customers. On the screen you can see a map of loading for our base stations. I think this loading map is something what we really need. We can understand how the people use the mobile communication. We can also see our representative offices where you can resolve all your issues if you may have them. But we need to understand where our subscribers can really consume our services. So we need to build up our infrastructure according to our customer wishes. So we also add our infrastructure to the normal urban infrastructure. This is the first service we tried to make in Russia, and we wanted to make it comfortable for the customers. I would like to be brief while we kept developing this history, because we also saw a very significant social aspect of this activity, because we are also consumers of our urban environment, and we also want to feel comfortable in the city. We can see the increase of people's mobility in the city. We have a lot of people coming to the city, and we also, when we analyze the load, as in the temporary population in the Moscow communities doesn't grow significantly. There is Matveevsk district where the increase of population is 18% in comparison to the previous year. Certainly we need to take into account when we plan the urban environment. I also would like to show you another aspect, how we understand it. This is a quite equal social balance. You can see the map, how the districts are connected with each other, how it is comfortable for the people to use cars on the weekends, and also to walk from district to district, and which districts they pass. The conclusion is very interesting. There are really bold lines. There's very typical routes of movement, and there are districts which are playing a role of transport hubs also for the walkers. It is quite important for us as Muscovites to use the social infrastructure without using the public transportation, without also using our own cars. So we also analyze which districts are most suitable for them. These are districts next to the bold lines. These are so-called non-isolated districts. Fili and the Sholkovsky districts are the most loaded hubs in Moscow. In the northern part of Moscow is not really suitable for pedestrians and walkers. But why do you think this history can keep developing? There are three principles. It gives a very quick answer what is happening with the city. Normally, we can identify the size of people in the city, living in the city here. We can stop measuring the number of people. We can just get the facts how urban environment is changing. So based on the facts, we can make forecast and can shift from the urban planning to the so-called yard planning for each particular house. For example, the Zhulebino and subway station was not so long ago, how it also changed the transportation flows and the pedestrian flows in this district. This is 18.4% of car users started using the Zhulebino subway station. This newly opened station attracted 18% of car drivers. But the Zhulebino was quite good for Zhulebino district, but for the neighboring districts it was not so important. And what we presented now to you, and this is the results of our joint study and the service I just told you, this is something what we already created. We don't need any additional infrastructure. It's a cloud service. In simple words, information is already collected. We only need to think how to use this big city data and how to meet the challenges, because the city is changing and is becoming more dynamic. Thank you. Alexei and Roman, thank you very much. It was extremely interesting, and I also did my best. I also used all the reserved time for your presentation. We don't have any reserved time left. Dear colleagues, if you do have any questions, really brief questions to the presenters, you're invited to ask them. Boris, you can use the microphone. Good afternoon. The question to the first presenter. What did you find in the data that the people don't really use vehicles to go to the city center, because the transport experts usually say that the center part of the city is overloaded due to the number of vehicles. And the second question is, how can you say that nothing correlates with the fact that we can identify the correlation with the particular factors? First of all, you need to say all the factors, but each factor you leave is a space for questions. And my last question for the Megafon company: how do you split the routes of the public transportation system and the private cars? Certainly, if you take the subway into account, it is clear. But if you have data that someone changed his route, if someone was used to drive a car and he shifted to use the public transportation, the subway, for example, how did it affect the result of loading? If you have any other questions, Constantine, you're welcome. My short questions, because we hope to get an answer in the end. The company who made this presentation identified a set of problems and showed to the city how these problems can be resolved. How do you see the cooperation with the city government? Who do you need to contact if there is no interface? How this interface should look like? Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, if you don't have any direct questions, I would like to give the floor to the next speaker, to Artem Ermolaev, to the Minister of Moscow government, who is heading the Moscow IT department. Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank for giving me a floor. We already started working together with Megafon. We spent a year to agree with the three main cell operators. I'm talking about MTS and Beeline T. And we are already getting this big data, and we also really like to carry out a significant study in the first quarter of 2014. As for Moscow, I would like to tell you how we're using technologies in our work. The first technology is actually to cope with this remote control. This is also part of IT. Okay, in this case I won't use my presentation and will only speak. Moscow is a big city, and I don't really want to overload you with the figures. Vancouver has 2.5 million people. In Moscow we have only 200,000 doctors and 200,000 teachers, because we have to work with big data, and we have to work with a big amount of information. And our task in working with data is to create two things. First, to monitor the city needs, and to create appropriate services, and to monitor how these services are meeting the citizens' requirements. We need to edit these services and to launch them again. This is a full cycle work. That's why we have a set of programs in the different areas: healthcare, safety, social policy, and we do create different services. And our task is to set up services in two directions. First, for the people, in order to let them use these comfortable services. Also, with this service, we can monitor what the people are using and what they don't use. And afterwards, we can move forward and know how to change this service. My example is from the healthcare. We have 300,000 doctors. We have 800 clinics and hospitals in the city. Our primary task is to get an opportunity for the people to be admitted at these hospitals and clinics. They can also do it via internet, get an SMS as a notification. We also created this service for us, first of all, because when we create this online system, we understood that the people have to wait 10 or 12 days for the visit to the physician, because it is not acceptable for the mega city, because you are sick now, you'd like to get the medical support now. So in this case, we managed to get a monitoring system, we managed to relocate the resources, so we started to change the medical care system in the city. We started joining or splitting the clinics, so we carried out a roaming system. For example, if you come to a hospital and the physician is busy, you can be sent to the neighboring hospital. What did it give us? First of all, we carried out the monitoring of doctors' loading. Now it works. That's good. It also allowed us to shorten the queues to the doctors and to use the time more efficient. So I think all the documents and the sickness history can be filled in electronically, so we get the data we can process. Our task was even more complicated than just to use a PC, because many of the doctors are quite conservative, so we use different technologies, also speech-to-text technology, when the doctors just need to say something to the microphone and data can be recorded and filed. I just gave you one example how we can monitor, because we have 11.5 in medically insured people in the city, and we can understand what healthcare problems they may have, and we can also monitor how 200,000 doctors are loaded and how they work and what their performance is. This is the first element of comparison, and the second one is the comparison in the utility area. We have 102 million square meters of streets that needs to be cleaned. How can we monitor this area? We equipped all the machines with the GLONASS devices. It's kind of the Russian GPS analog device. So our Department of Urban Utilities has a monitoring system collecting all this information, and they can also see what is happening in different parts of the cities, where the streets or yards are cleaned or not. It's a kind of revolution in the utility mentality, because it used to be very easy in the past. We had 300 inspectors checking different yards, streets, highways, and when something was not clean, they were just making orders to clean, and the answer was actually, we just cleaned this yard, but someone came and made dirty again. In order to have a visual contact, because the sensors do not work all the time, we can also monitor visually. We can also give the fact that a certain part of the city was cleaned or was not cleaned by the contractors. We have 2,000 video cameras in the streets, and we have 220,000 cameras in yards. So we have around 120,000 cameras which serve two needs: utility service and the city safety. We also assess how the city is clean, and we're using different information systems for these purposes. However, we work for the sake of our citizens. That's why we created a resource to assess how well we are doing. I'm talking about our department, about healthcare department, about safety department. So we created an board where everyone can leave a comment, and we are to give an answer within 8 days. So we can also get another assessment of the reality. We also get information on so-called hot spots where we need to react fast. We also understand the needs of people and what we need to budget for 2014 or 2015, and what do we need to change in different areas. In the moment you can leave 200 different types of claims you can leave on this portal. Now we understand which services are functioning well, where we need to take managerial decisions or have an influence on the managers in this or that district. For us, it is very important to have an online monitoring of the city in order to have this picture. That's why we equip the whole city with the video cameras, and we are increasing the number of cameras in order to fulfill two goals, in order to make the city clean and safe. How the system is built. A camera located in a public area has a 30-time zoom, so we can even catch in pedestrian eye. In the yards is a 10-time zoom, but you can also recognize a license plate of a car parked, for example, outside of the street or parking lots. And in your houses you can also see small cameras with the 5-time zooms. And all the data are stored within 5 days. Well, beside this online monitoring, we're also building up an intellectual and smart system to analyze non-standard situations. Certainly, we can understand where they have overcrowded situations, and the camera can also give us a signal.
If we talk about communal services, we can zoom on to waste bins. If it has been emptied at 7 o'clock, then we can act in a certain manner. So we collect the data. We get an image from the people, and this information becomes to be more personalized and more accurate. So I understand that I have to wrap up, and there's in every area we have to collect the data. Secondly, we have to provide services for the people and monitor how this is implemented, how it performs. It is necessary for the citizens, for the inhabitants of the city, and for us to optimize our costs and to make really necessary things. This is all automated, which allow us to analyze the data in healthcare and provide integrated services and get an idea of how the city lives. Thank you. Dear friends, are there direct questions to the Minister of Moscow government? Yes, please. Use the mic, please. I have several questions. One is whether there are certain working tools like aimed at the roads. Do you have any monitoring projects based on the applications of people? Otherwise, do you have any other tools to control? There can be other tools which are made by certain activists, by bloggers. As for the monitoring cameras, video surveillance cameras, the idea of smart cities connected to the outer surveillance cameras, and we have multiple cameras, and sometimes it leads to an increase in crime because people don't trust each other any longer. They trust the big brother who can potentially help them, but in case you get your bag stolen in a cafe, no one gets caught. Then I have a question to the previous speaker. I would like to make it more accurate. Moscow is one of the most densely populated city. Where does the statistics comes from? Because Wikipedia says the opposite things. Do you get the data from Wikipedia? For example, for example, just to make it. Yeah, I travel a lot, and I perceive Moscow as a very non-dense city. But thank you so much. Colleagues, do you have any other questions? No. I will give the floor in a very exotic turn. We'll have a 5-minute speech in Spanish. Those of you who don't have the translation devices, I feel your pain, but the sound of the Spanish language in Moscow is a good sign, of course, in the snowy Moscow. So the floor goes to Willie Miller, Managing Director of the Agency for the Development of Urban Infrastructure for Barcelona region. It's Spain or even Catalonia. How can I say it better? Thank you so much. I'll just help you. I'll just help you a bit, and I will talk about Barcelona. And I'm not able to speak in Russian, but my colleague from Vancouver speaks a different language. We are very distinguished people in the culture, and in our presentations we'll give you a sense of how this can be perceived. This can be perceived. And I would like to explain how this can what Barcelona is. I'll talk about what Barcelona is suggesting and what's awaiting Barcelona. And the smart city is a business. It's a part of business, and I represent the part of the business which pertains to the city management. Of social city management, what we are building, what we are designing for people. Cities are much more than the cameras can see. There are many other dimensions of the city, and it's very important to remind that if I come from Barcelona, I can tell you that Barcelona is the capital of an important region, province of Catalonia in Spain. It's the second largest city in Spain, and it's the first city in the country which generates most GDP of the country. After we apply all these things in practice, all the projects, this can lead to certain mistakes. We're planning the city, and all the cities are planned in a social sense. Barcelona should become should live better, should become more livable for people. And over the past 20-30 years we've done a lot, and this is an example of how we decapitalized this city and how we used everything which could have been implemented. We used the 1992 Olympics and the exhibition, and it has changed the model of city development. We got the infrastructure which we needed, and along with that, after 1993, after the Olympic Games, we have developed many other projects And this has been an urbanist change in the city. And our city has achieved the level of a major city. And now I'm representing the agency, which is a regional agency and which deals with regional problems. Barcelona wants to be a main stakeholder in the smart city, but this shouldn't be prejudicing the city structure and the city life. And there is a social dimension to all that. Yes, of course, we want to make a showcase in the city. And it can show us how the city is transformed via smart city. I work more in the sphere where we create the city of the future, so that this way should not be changed. And Barcelona tries to play the role of those cities which which go a different way, and which go a certain direction, regardless of day, night, or the language. And this city should take part in the lives of its inhabitants. Dear colleagues, let's go over to a quick express discussion of the speeches which have been given here. It's a very small change of genre. We have a voting here. I ask of the organizers to announce. You have your pulse, each one of you, and you have to press sign in. Please press sign in, and then please choose the number of the answer which will emerge on the screen. Now on the screen you will see this questionnaire. If you don't have an answer, what then? You don't vote. You just don't vote if you don't have an answer. In our case, we have certain people who abstain from voting. Well, just in case, I recommend that you press the number 3, just in case if you don't have an answer. Supercomputer is an analog of the collective subconscious. Well, 66%, only that much. Only 66% think that the city should be managed by the citizens, by the people. Someone has listened to my call and pressed the supercomputer option, but I don't understand why the mayor answer is in red. Dear colleagues, why? Well, do we have any questions? Great. I'm sorry, I can't hear because the speaker is not using the microphone. I'm sorry. Well, it is interesting how representative is our audience here. Well, you think that we could press the button twice? Huh? Well, you feel your participation. You have the sense of belonging. Let's get over to the next question. Well, you could suggest that. Excuse me. The result is quite clear. Next question, please. I will just press all the 3 buttons, if you ask me. But the environmental specialists are not enough present here. Well, next question, please. How useful do you find the communication services and navigation and the search of information in the city? There's a green zone here, green area. Well, the relation is clear. The ratio is clear. Next question, please. How useful are this communication? That's all. Yeah, that's all. That's the last one. Thank you so much for your votes, for your participation in this express voting. This can be placed at different reference files, and I suggest that all of those who are present at this table, let's take the topic of today's round table, if it's possible. Let's take the theses of our today's speeches quite seriously, and hopefully we'll have time to talk about the questions which were asked. I represent the medicine company, and why do we have a competence to talk about that? We had a small survey of 100 small towns, and we looked at how many pieces of equipment are there. About 50% of all the telecoms equipment belongs to the Ericsson company, and we support about 1 billion subscribers. And what Roman has said, my first thesis is that if we want to build everything, including politics, including different structures, which Artem represents, what you're doing is quite valid, and you could be interested in forecasts, where we're going, where we're going to come. It can be quite successful, and we can see the speed of change. And over the next 5 years, the traffic of data will increase 15 times. Tremendous changes are going to happen, and every one of us has a smartphone. Every one of us is becoming a participant. We provide data for smart cities, for smart systems. How are we going to use this in the future? Many cities are much ahead of the others, and we should look at many different cases that have been presented today, and we make ratings to make it more popular. We base them on the data, and we see how different technologies can be used and how successful cities are in terms of social development, economic development. This is close to what Roger has mentioned, what Willie has mentioned. How are cities developing in terms of the quality of life? This can be measured by certain criteria, and then the subsequent analysis shows us that Moscow is at the first half of the list, and we see how successfully the technology is used and how well they are deeply rooted in our infrastructure. But we have to catch up with the cities like Stockholm, like Copenhagen. If we use the data on internet use, in 90% of the cases you have readily available internet 1 megabit and higher. In Moscow, in different other cities, in New York, in Tokyo, the speed is 100 kilobits in 90% of the cases. So we have quite a way to go. Thank you. Dmitry Moisevsky, CEO of Ericsson Russia. Dear colleagues, please, Konstantin Fokin. We represent the Center for Innovative Development in the government of Moscow, together with Artem. We are walking around the triangle: city, inhabitants, technologies. This is one very rare situation in which opportunities match our possibilities and our desires. We need our people to participate in the solution, in solving the problems. The creative class, the thinking, the smart people should feel part, have the sense of belonging to the city. And the technologies, especially over the recent 10 years, over the internet and the smartphones, make it possible for many people to participate in the life of the city. Unfortunately, the city government, is a bottleneck in this respect. Technologies can do everything, but people are lagging behind due to a bureaucratic structure, due to red tape, and we've got a number of interesting services which have been implemented in Moscow.
This is one of the best services of this kind in the world, and you can see it should be kept in development. This is my first remark. The future is behind the integral solutions. We have a very good center of city management in terms of safety, firefighting, or environmental protection, or traffic, but they have the same data but make different conclusions. So there should be a connectivity between these different departments and services, and the providers of solutions should also understand this connection should be also linked with healthcare, safety, and environmental protection, because the city needs a more complete solutions, and you have to integrate them. Today we got the study results. Was it done for this forum? No. These among the top 10 cities in the world, with Mumbai, St. Paul, and Moscow was ranked in terms of intellectual capital and innovations. It's quite difficult to compare with the developed cities, but among these big cities we are ranked first. But not all the geniuses are living in Moscow. That's why it's quite important to exchange the best practices. I'm not talking about the technical solutions. I'm just talking about how we can search for the solutions and can also compare it with other big cities. I think this is important. A year ago, Moscow joined this program. We are creating these platforms. A week ago, a delegation of Moscow government visited Barcelona. We missed you, but we met all your colleagues, the main architects from the Information Institute. Artem signed a city protocol, and they will develop a mechanism for better information exchange and best practices. Moscow starts giving open requests in the areas of environmental protection, so we will work on decreasing the noise level, and will keep developing the number of educational facilities, because at the moment the solution providers can also unite and offer a certain solution to the city government. We can also compare it in money in terms of acting, what limits are existing, and then can deploy these solutions. As for the current services, we have a crowd complaining. We need to work systematically how to improve the situation, because the citizens are already united in different communities or groups and have the 2.0 mood in many countries where the role of government is strong. There should be a very good interface for the cooperation with the cities, because complaining was possible also 3 years ago, but we got the portal, the service at an absolutely new scale and absolutely new effect, because to work with the citizens initiative is the next step. I'm finishing, and the last thing I would like to tell you, because some days ago my colleagues and I started an application based on open urban data, and we got more than 100 proposals, and 50 of them are real services, and we will announce the winners tomorrow. This is the practical solution. Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me, because I'm representing the Nokia company, because we are developing the urban maps. And I think that this session is one of the most interesting I attended within the next years, and I really see a good job done and a good research and study results. And I would like to tell you, when I read the book of Arthur Clarke, The City and the Stars, it was a novel on a super city managed by a supercomputer. And even when the citizens get bored, the supercomputer can also create a cataclysm, for example, a dragon, which can attack the city. But we are living in a reality in Moscow, showing very good intentions and also very good results in terms of setting up such an informational environment. As for the cooperation with other partners, I can say we have companies developing geosystems, and Mr. Ermolaev, the founder of the talks conferences, said that the big data were just a rubbish, and map is something that can give a picture to this big data, and or a pattern of this big data. And at the moment we are really trying to understand what map data are needed. It deals not with Moscow, because there are open or closed services and there are professional data providers, but you'd like to focus, if you want to build a beautiful house, the fundament is required. Certainly, I'm really happy to see what Moscow is doing now in this respect, but there are particular reasons. But we understand that mapping should be united and single, unified and single, because if you want to create maps through the crowdsourcing, it's quite dangerous. However, when there is only one public base and the commercial partners are suffering difficulties to communicate with the government, I think this is the thing what we need to think about, because these technological things like big data are much more powerful than we all are, and we need to make this change within the nearest future. Thank you very much. Thank you. Daniil Kozlov, head of sales in the corporate and public sectors. Dear colleagues, before the main speakers can react on what's happening here, we have really few minutes for small remarks from the audience. Do you have any volunteers to express their short opinions? Does anybody want? I'll give you such an opportunity. Boris, you should be really brief. I will be really brief. Besides the projects for the open data, it is quite important to make initiative projects for the big data with the anonymous data, because without people, without the joint fantasy, it is not possible to think how to break through. Thank you very much. But does anyone also want to express his or her opinion within the same time limit? Or if there are no volunteers, I would like to ask the speakers to answer the questions you were asked. Probably first I will give the floor to the Roger, because Boris also or someone else asked you a question. It was Constantine.
A question around the role of community in the development of policy. And Vancouver has traditionally had a significant amount of public consultation in looking at how policy is developed in all of the communities, made a very real effort to involve the communities, to be collaborative in terms of how policy is developed. And that really has been the foundation of the implementation of policy, because essentially at the time that it's been concluded, the public is on side with that kind of direction. So very, very important, I think, to how Vancouver's managed to move forward in terms of the social development, cultural development, and community development.
Thank you very much. I just started this format too early because I also wanted to give the floor to Farid. I apologize for this mistake. Farid Abdul Rahman, Chief Commercial Officer of TCOM Investments from UAE.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Farid and I come from a business background in terms of developing cities and developing smart cities. I also was a CEO of Smart City for 7 years till June this year, where I moved to the corporate now. Obviously, for me, it's a passion when it comes to smart city and the technology that we can use in cities. Since 2000, we started building in Dubai. We started building some business parks related to knowledge economy and not industrial, actually, not heavy industrial. And we moved from the center. We moved very far from the center, where we created some cities around the city. And I'm talking about 40, 50, 60 kilometers of radius out of the center. And since then, 2000 till today, I see the technology has evolved tremendously. For us, because at the end of the day, we have to look at the profit and loss account and our balance sheet. We always look at the technology and how to serve our customers, because that's the most important one, whether it's infrastructure or solutions to get in touch with our customer within our business. As I said, so the technology, today you can pick and choose any technology you want, but the question is, what is the return of investment on that technology for us? That's the question that always we ask ourselves. And that's the main point when it comes to our business. We also looked at many concepts around the world when it comes to smart cities, and what we see today, that there are certain technologies or infrastructures becoming a must. So when you move to a city or when you develop a city, or when it comes to urban development, there are certain things you must have them, and the rest, what we can call them additional services, additional value added to the citizenship or to the customers within that city. Thank you. That's all.
Спасибо. Спасибо.
Thank you very much. Alexei, you were asked several questions, but we really have limited in time, please choose the most important and answer it. I have a bad reputation in terms of time. No, everything is good. For the first question of Boris, it is quite important. Why it was so counterintuition? Because the people moving by cars and by subway every morning, this is the social poll data. So we are talking about the movement to the center of the city, and the professionals can assume that it's not a matter of fact. It's quite difficult to hear that the professionals know exactly that it's not a matter of fact, because the development of Moscow, this is the radial highways, the Leninsky Prospect, the Kutuzovsky Prospect. These are radial highways. We are talking here about movement from the suburb to the center only. So in this case, we need to increase the number of blood vessel channels in order to let the traffic go around the center but not through. Everybody understands what we are talking about, but it doesn't happen, and it is quite an important result because it gave us exact parameters. It showed where we have the increase on traffic, and if we keep developing it, we will be able to use it in practice. The genius map of Roman with these graphs he showed, Moscow is a network of islands with a very poor connection, and this connection is missing. If we had these maps available for the decision makers, our city would enjoy a different quality of life. If you're talking about the density of Moscow, in terms of housing areas, we have a lot of areas which is not built, not developed. In this case, Wikipedia doesn't play any role, but in terms of housing, we're actually not really well developed. You're absolutely right. I would like to add to Alexei. When we're talking about the northeastern highway, we have been talking about for the last 1.5 years, but you need to get familiar with the urban development plan, and the construction doesn't happen on one day. So in this, nevertheless, I had 2 questions. The first one was devoted to our own project. We don't work with any other projects because we have our own projects. The project, our city, is integrated with all our projects, starting with the angry citizen, ending up with Mr. Navalny, with the utility system. Here we have integration with the rosyama.ru website. We created a business procedure where an official is to react within 8 days on a complaint, and he will be deprived of the bonus if he doesn't make a reply to the complaint. So this is a real business instrument. We are also using to the full extent of other resources. We are really interested to get more complaints and more interest to our portal. As for the video, I don't really agree with you. The question was, can the increase of number of cameras can lead to increase of crime? No, we see backward trends. There was a pilot project in the southwest of Moscow when we gave the video from the camera to the citizens, so the people can monitor what is happening in their own yard, in their own house. Because sometimes we'll use that the old ladies used to see it next to their houses, and in the winter it's quite cold to see it outside, so they can sit at home and watch video from the camera what is happening in the yard. But in a moment we can see a decrease in the level of crime. Thank you very much, dear colleagues. I think the current discussion shows that the topic we chose has so many different opinions and directions for the further development. So it would be really not correct to unite all these different opinions and directions in one conclusion. It is clear this is the area of cooperation among different players which can be interested in the development of technologies and social platforms. In terms of social political analysis, technical analysis, it requires a further understanding what can we see now and what happened here at our round table. It is absolutely clear big companies, mid-sized companies, and the government or any political players are interested in this area of smart cities. So the business showed that information that was just an addition to the financial or commercial activity is a product that can capitalize the activity of this or that entity, and it is quite important for the government, for the political players, because they can understand how the different processes and trends are accepted by the community. And they can see very clearly a link, and it was pointed out during our discussion. However, the participation of the third part of this triangle, I'm talking about the community, was reflected in the answer. I don't know how to answer this question. See, the request for participation of community and citizens should be clarified even better in order to understand the role of community in this social political game, and the entry point for this community or social place should be organized more exact. But we are facing complications here, and the questions from the audience, it was absolutely clear, because the first link is already built and it can forecast the future evolution, but the second link with the participation of social structures or communities is something what we need to think about. We need some solutions, and for the second link, this is probably the main conclusion of this round table. We have a lot of different issues. I don't want to list them all, but we raised them here, and it was quite interesting to listen to different presentations, because they were showing how can be used in the practice, also in terms of study too. And I would like to thank all the participants. Thank you very much, dear colleagues, and I wish you a good luck and good day. Thank you.